The Elves and the Shoemaker. In the quaint cobblestone village of Wishington, nestled in the rolling hills of old Germany, where timber-framed houses leaned gently against each other and the scent of fresh bread drifted from bakery windows each morning, lived a kind-hearted shoemaker named Elias and his young daughter, Clara. Clara was 8 years old, with golden brown braids and wide, hopeful eyes that shone even when times were hard. The two of them lived in a small, drafty cottage at the edge of the village. Elias's wife had passed away 2 winters earlier, leaving behind a quiet sadness that lingered in their home like morning mist. Business had grown slower with each passing season. Rich merchants now bought fancy boots from the big city, and the villagers had little money to repair their worn-out shoes. Many nights, Elias and Clara ate thin soup and shared one small piece of bread. One cold autumn evening, as rain tapped softly on the thatched roof and the wind whispered through the cracks in the walls, Clara sat beside her father at the workbench. Tears glistened in her eyes as she watched him stitch the last worn pair of shoes with trembling hands. "Papa, what will we do when we have no more leather?" she asked in a small voice. "I'm scared we'll have nothing left." Elias set down his needle and pulled his daughter close. His hands were rough from years of work, but his hug was warm. "We must keep working with honest hearts, my little one. Kindness has a way of returning when we need it most." But even as he spoke, worry lined his gentle face. They had only enough leather left for one final pair of shoes. That night, after Clara had fallen asleep under her thin blanket, Elias cut the last piece of fine leather and laid it neatly on his workbench. He sighed deeply, blew out the candle, and went to bed with a heavy heart. When the first pale light of morning crept through the window the next day, something miraculous had happened. There, on the workbench, sat a perfect pair of finished shoes. The stitches were tiny and even, the leather shaped beautifully, and the soles strong and supple. Elias and Clara stared in wonder. Who could have done this? Clara whispered, running her small fingers over the beautiful craftsmanship. They placed the shoes in the shop window. By midday, a wealthy merchant saw them and paid a handsome price, more money than Elias had earned in many months. That evening, father and daughter enjoyed a warm meal with fresh bread and meat. For the first time in a long while, they went to bed with full stomachs and lighter hearts. The next night, Elias bought more leather and again left the cut pieces on his workbench. Once more, in the morning, exquisite shoes awaited them. This pattern continued for many weeks. Every night, unseen hands worked with incredible skill, creating the finest shoes the village had ever seen. Word spread far and wide. Customers traveled from distant towns, and soon Elias's little shop was busy and warm. Clara and her father grew happier. They repaired the leaky roof, bought warm winter coats, and even helped neighbors who were struggling. Yet a gentle question grew in Clara's heart. Who were the mysterious helpers, and how could they ever thank them? One quiet evening, as snow began to dust the rooftops of Wishington, Clara had an idea. "Papa," she said with shining eyes, "let's stay awake tonight and see who is helping us." Elias hesitated but finally agreed. They hid behind a large cupboard after dinner, leaving fresh leather on the workbench as usual. The clock ticked slowly. Clara fought to keep her eyes open. Just as the village clock struck midnight, the window creaked open gently. 2 tiny figures climbed inside, a little elf man and a little elf woman, no taller than Clara's knee. They had pointed ears, bright cheerful faces, and clothes that were worn and tattered. Without a word, they set to work. Their small hands moved with lightning speed and remarkable skill, cutting, stitching, and shaping the leather into beautiful shoes. Clara and Elias watched in silent wonder. When the elves finished just before dawn, they looked tired but happy. Before leaving, the little elf woman gently touched one of the finished shoes with a sad smile. As the elves slipped back out the window, Clara whispered, "Papa, their clothes are so old and ragged. They must be cold." That day, Clara and Elias did not cut new leather. Instead, they worked together on something special. Clara carefully measured the tiny footprints left on the workbench. Elias used the softest, warmest fabric and leather to craft 2 perfect tiny suits, one for the elf man and one for the elf woman, complete with little hats, coats, trousers, and shoes. They worked until their fingers ached, pouring love and gratitude into every stitch. That night, They left the new clothes on the workbench along with a note written in Clara's careful handwriting. "Thank you for your kindness. You have saved us. May these clothes bring you warmth and joy as you have brought us. With endless gratitude, Elias and Clara." Father and daughter hid once again. At midnight, the two elves returned. When they saw the beautiful new clothes, their faces lit up with pure delight. They clapped their tiny hands and danced joyfully around the workbench. Quickly, they changed into the new garments, twirling and admiring how well they fit. Before leaving, the little elf man bowed deeply toward the cupboard where Elias and Clara were hiding, and the elf woman blew a gentle kiss. Then they vanished into the night. The next morning, the workbench was empty of new shoes. But Elias and Clara did not mind. Their shop continued to do well because of the reputation the elves had helped them build. More importantly, their hearts felt full. Winter passed into spring. Flowers bloomed across the hills, and the village grew even more prosperous. One sunny afternoon, Clara was playing near the ancient forest when she heard soft laughter. There, beneath a glowing mushroom circle, stood the two elves, now dressed warmly in the clothes she and her father had made. They waved happily at her. The little elf woman stepped forward and spoke in a voice like tinkling bells. "Your gratitude touched us deeply. Because you showed thanks instead of greed, our own troubles were lifted. We will always remember your kindness." From that day forward, whenever Elias and Clara faced difficulties, small blessings seemed to find their way to them. A basket of fresh berries on the porch, a repaired fence overnight, or a kind neighbor offering help. They never saw the elves again, but they felt their presence in the gentle magic that now filled their lives. Clara grew into a kind and generous young woman. She often told the village children the story of the elves and the shoemaker. "True gratitude," she would say with warm eyes, "always comes back to you. When you give thanks with an open heart, life finds beautiful ways to give back." One golden summer evening, as the sun painted the sky in soft pinks and oranges, Clara and her father sat on the porch of their comfortable home. Birds sang in the trees, and the scent of roses filled the air. Elias put his arm around his daughter. "I once feared we would lose everything," he said softly. "But because we chose gratitude, we gained more than shoes and money. We gained joy, friends, and peace." Clara leaned her head on her father's shoulder and smiled. The lonely, worried girl who once cried over an empty workbench had discovered the sweetest truth in life. When you respond to kindness with a grateful heart, that gratitude returns to you in wonderful and unexpected ways. And in the charming village of Wishington, the story of the elves and the shoemaker continued to warm hearts for generations. A gentle reminder that no act of kindness is ever wasted, and a thankful heart is the greatest treasure of all.